Hello, and welcome to our video profile in South Korea. We, the Australian National Department of Young Scholarly Researchers, or better known as ANDES researchers, developed this profile with a specific purpose in mind, and that is to identify the economic environment, political behavior, existing laws and regulations, as well as the cultural elements in South Korea. All of these elements will be used to evaluate whether it is a viable country for Australian businesses to expand to. In this video, we will explore all the elements above in detail to provide the best information for you, local Australian businesses, to expand to South Korea. We will also compare how South Korea stepped up against the Australian counterparts. We understand that not all businesses are the same. That's why we will recommend specific industries that would profit the most from expansion to South Korea, and which industries that would lose the most. But first, let us evaluate the impact of globalization has on South Korea. Among the most critical factors influencing any modern nation's economy is the level and impact of globalization, as it can simultaneously create vast opportunities and threats for all countries impacted by it. Many nations have been wary of globalization as a result, but from its creation, South Korea has embraced globalization, particularly economic, which has had drastic impacts on South Korea. From 1950 to 1953, South Korea, which had already been neglected by Japanese rule, was devastated by the Korean War, which, when coupled with very little infrastructure and natural resources, placed it amongst the world's poorest nation with a GDP lower than that of Ghana. Nevertheless, South Korea has experienced astronomical growth since then, with its GDP growing to be 31,000 times of its 1953 size in 2014, and it is currently the world's 11th largest economy, despite only having the 28th largest population. This is largely due to South Korea's advanced factory endowments, which allow it to gain comparative advantages within 230 industries, primarily manufacturing, where it can add significant value to imported goods and export the final products. In this time, the level of globalization within South Korea has also experienced similar rapid growth, with the World Bank estimating that the ratio of imports to GDP growing from 12% in 1960 to 39% in 2018. Similarly, the ratio of exports to GDP has grown from almost non-existent in 1953 to 2.6% in 1960 and 44% in 2018, making it the world's fifth largest exporter. South Korea's ability to import raw materials and transform them is crucial to its export-driven economy, which would not be able to experience the level of development of growth without international trade. Its capabilities are highlighted in many of its key imports and exports, such as the importing of crude petroleum and the exporting of refined petroleum. Without international trade and globalization, South Korea would be reliant on its own. Natural resources available to create products would be impossible due to its extreme dearth of these resources. Because of South Korea's specific occupations, education levels, and income from the offshoring of some industries has resulted in increases in average wages of South Korean manufacturing workers, so the existence of cheaper potential labor doesn't detrimentally affect South Korea's workers' wages of income inequality. The impacts of globalization on South Korea aren't limited to its economy, and its social environment has been revolutionized compared to its pre-war state. During South Korea's previous period of independence from foreign rule, women were forced to be subservient to men within the Namyeon-byobi ideology. However, the introduction of modern Western social ideas, particularly in the 1980s when globalization became more accepted within South Korea, has led to social and legal shifts, such as the Equal Inheritance Law, which has improved the perception and treatment of women within South Korea. Managerial practices have also been affected by globalization, as South Korea has looked to the US and Japan for more effective methods of management, which have somewhat replaced traditional practices. The primary impacts of globalization on South Korea's business culture are the increased fluidity of employee movement, the reduction of importance of seniority within organizations, and prioritization of effective work structures and processes. South Korea's embracement of globalization has also resulted in some issues which must also be considered. Due to its heavy reliance on imports and exports, South Korea can be in a somewhat precarious position economically, as it requires its trading partners to continue to act as they are currently in order for its economy to function. One highly relevant example of this is the recent escalation of tension. Crucial South Korean companies such as Samsung, LG, and SK Hynix were severely impacted by Japanese restrictions on the exportation of resistant hydrogen fluoride, as well as fluorinated polyamide, which are critical components of OLED displays and semiconductor products. And with Japan controlling 90% of the global market for two of these chemicals, South Korea's reliance on its trading partners could jeopardize its ability to produce vital products. Japan has also removed South Korea from its trusted trading partner whitelist, which would further impact South Korea's economy. In addition, South Korea's natural environment has suffered considerably as a result of globalization. The industrialization and increased production within South Korea, which has arisen as a result of its attempt to enter the global market, has severely degraded the natural environment primarily in the form of air pollution and the destruction of many old-growth forests. Globalization has aided in revolutionizing South Korea, turning it from one of the poorest and underdeveloped nations in the world into a global economic power with the ability to make up for its lack of natural resources by adding value to imported resources. In addition to its miraculous impact on South Korea's economy, social innovations have benefited South Korea's populace, and although they are negative of globalization for South Korea, it has significantly improved the country's prospects overall. The economy in South Korea has changed and improved drastically since the 1950s, from allowing women to work, instilling women's rights, changing the primary industry production, the government becoming more democratic, and having the government be more involved as to caring for their people. The role of the industry in the earlier years of the economy was particularly agriculture. As South Korea became more developed, they expanded into manufacturing, and slowly, agriculture decreased considerably and manufacturing increased. South Korea's top export in 1961 were primary products such as iron ore and tungsten. In the 1990s, capital-intensive electronic goods and computer-related products took the lead. Currently, South Korea's largest industry are electronics, automobiles, telecommunications, shipbuilding, chemicals, and steel. The South Korean government played a leading role. The South Korean government created its first 5-year economic plan in 1962 to promote economic development. The first 5-year economic development plan focused on transforming the economy from a foreign aid-dependent country to an independent one. Foreign and domestic direct investment from the United States and Japan in the earlier days helped develop Korea's economy. After the Korea War, South Korea was one of the poorest countries in the world. South Korea developed their economy very rapidly under a government-led development paradigm, with Koreans being highly educated and having a good work ethic. In 2017, the HDI rank for Korea was 0.903, which is much higher compared to 166 other countries. It increased by 0.175 since the 1990s. This shows that there is an improvement in terms of life expectancy, education, and income. In 1990, the average life expectancy was 71.1 years of age, and in 2017, it was 82.4 years of age. In 1989, South Korea created a national health insurance program. They wanted to reduce the cost of healthcare so that more people were likely to visit clinics and get the required treatment, knowing that it would not heavily cost them. Therefore, the government built healthcare organizations that had specific medical roles as a way to improve specialization and diagnosis. The life expectancy will allow the firm to determine the time period an individual is likely to work for in the company, so that the company does not have to deal with high staff turnover. It will help prevent high costs from having to consistently advertise jobs and forego time in production to hiring new people. The average years of education increased from 13.6 to 16.5. For example, South Korea pressed on the importance of a business education in order to work in the corporate industry. More specifically, getting a master's in business administration. Thus, people seeking to earn a well-paying position are more likely to attempt to achieve the requirements needed. As of 2017, the gross national income per capita is $35,945. In terms of an Australian firm wishing to expand into South Korea, the main information of relevance would be South Korea's economic development. This is because they will be curious to know the spending nature of South Koreans and their reaction to the opening of an international organization. Moreover, learning about South Korea's development over the years may help them understand the economy better and decide if the expansion of their business will be successful. The level of education will allow the Australian firm to see if the people have the required skill to meet the company's production and efficiency level. It will show the individual's amount of commitment and desire to grow. To carefully evaluate the cultural and social aspects of South Korea's lifestyle, we use Hofstadter's cultural dimension concept. This concept not only breaks down the country's norm, but also explores the subtleties of their behaviors and attitudes. In South Korea, like almost all Asian countries, society have hierarchy, which means people are ranked based on their relative status or authority. Less powerful members is expected to defer to more powerful member of society. This implies people accept the existence of hierarchical order and inherent inequalities within the organization. On the other hand, Australia scores quite low on power distance, which means every member of society are perceived as equal, regardless of their rank or background. Within Australian organizations, there is hierarchy, but the line between superiors and subordinates is not clear. Communication established between managers and employees are informal and happens frequently. One of the importance of understanding power distance is when it comes to business negotiations. Koreans perceive titles and status highly. Therefore, senior Korean officials might feel disrespected if we send junior member no matter how expert he or she may be. In order to maintain a good relation, company must aware of it by delegating the right officials to negotiate the deals. South Korea boasts collectivist culture, which means people put group goals over individual desire. Collectivist culture expects people to do what is right for family, community, and nation. Relationships between employer and employee are like family, with the hiring and promotion decisions sometimes based on how close their relation is. Australia has highly individualist culture, which means people look after themselves. People will pursue individual goals over group goals and strive for their own success. In the business world, people are expected to do things by themselves with their own initiatives. Hiring and promotions decisions are based on merit and performance shown in the workforce. Relevant example that show collectivist culture of Korean people is when doing business introduction. Koreans tend to reject doing business with strangers without friends' introduction. In order to collaborate well, it is important to build personal relationships. Having great relationship between both parties will make doing business easier. South Korea is a feminine society, which means people are relationship-oriented and put great emphasis on quality of life. If any conflict arises, it will be resolved through negotiations and compromises. People focus on their well-being and perceive work-life balance as an important aspect of life. Meanwhile, Australia is a masculine society, which means people tend to have strong egos and put great emphasis on self-achievement. People in the society are proud of their accomplishments and materialistic wealth. If any conflict arises, it will be resolved at individual level with intent to win. South Korean workers are considered feminine. When offered incentives, flexibility and free time are preferred over monetary because Koreans value work-life balance. As they are also a collectivist society, Koreans spend their free time with their family as a result. South Korea has one of the highest levels of uncertainty avoidance in the world. Countries with this behavior are conservative and rigid in their approach and sometimes have a hard time accepting new ideas. In these cultures, there are many social conventions that control people's lives. Furthermore, people in this society tend to work hard for future endeavors. Australia is somewhere in the middle, which suggests openness in innovation, though they approach it with conservativeness and pragmatism. In this society, people are open to change, although might feel worried of the outcome. Australians are hardworking but know when to take time off to escape from stress at work. To set up a meeting with a Korean company, it is best to schedule 1 month in advance and also arrive on time. South Koreans believe in the commitment made and avoid cancelling them as they will see us as unreliable and untrustworthy. South Korean people are pragmatic with long-term oriented planning. In this culture, people seek for virtues and good examples as their life philosophy. Society behavior tend to be modest and are reluctant to talk about themselves. On top of that, people are more open to a compromise when there is no way to solve it. Australian people are short-term oriented with strong inclination to establish their absolute truth. They are normative in their thinking and look for quick results and short-term gains. People in this society need to sell themselves in order to be taken seriously. Furthermore, compromise is seen as a sign of weakness. Business in South Korea prioritize long-term goals over short-term ones. They believe in steady growth, not profit, is the driving force for the success of the business. People believe this is the best action for a company as it will ensure its sustainability and durability. South Korean society is shown to be one of restraint. Societies with a low score in this dimension have a tendency to cynicism and pessimism. Also, in contrast to indulgent societies, restrained societies do not put much emphasis on leisure time and control the gratification of their desire. People with this orientation have the perception that their actions are restrained by social norms and feel that indulging themselves is somewhat wrong. People in societies classified by a high score in indulgence generally exhibit a willingness to realize their impulses and desires with regard to enjoying life and having fun. They possess a positive attitude and have a tendency towards optimism. In addition, they place a higher degree of importance on leisure time, act as they please, and spend money as they wish. Australia has comparative advantages in the agricultural industry. Comparative advantage arise from a range of different factors, and often combination of these. In agriculture, significant factors can include natural resources, climate, human resources, market proximity, institutional settings, and policy frameworks. It is difficult to objectively compare these factors internationally, but success in export markets provides strong evidence of where Australian agriculture's comparative advantages lie. More than 2/3 of all Australian agricultural production is exported, although for wool, cotton, sugar, beef and grains, exports account for more than 90% of production. Other strong export sectors include dairy, sheep meats and wine, for all of which exports account for more than 50% of production. The ability to efficiently produce a pasture-fed beef, sheep meats and wool is a significant comparative advantage for Australian agriculture, especially an increase in demand for these products from middle-class Asian consumers. Australia is also a very competitive exporter of livestock, being a world leader in live sheep exports and one of the largest exporters of beef, dairy, cattle, and goats. The quality of Australian livestock, in combination with world-leading standards of biosecurity, welfare, and animal health, makes Australia very competitive in the global livestock export market. Despite South Korea's late transition to global trading, South Korea has managed to find the strongest trade in which their country is specialized at. However, elements such as cultural dimension and human development should also be considered when creating a concept to expand to South Korea. As mentioned, South Korea's strongest industries are electronics, automobiles, as well as various electronic-based production and manufacturing. Therefore, any Australian businesses who are in these specific industries are likely to succeed in expanding to South Korea. However, to produce and manufacture agricultural products in South Korea is ill-advised. This is mainly because Australia would have the absolute advantage in producing better quality agricultural products at a more efficient level than South Korea, despite having greater demand in South Korea. We are Andy Researchers. Thank you for viewing our video on South Korea profile.